Welcome, Becky and Francis. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Well, welcome. So Becky Fine and Francis McCorkle.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And obviously the subject that brings you here is a very serious subject, but you've really gone about it in a very creative way. You've created a project called The Journey of Powerful Voices. And very interesting, and it's about well, I'll let you talk about it. Tell us what it is and the birth of it.
Absolutely, yeah. What we're working on is a film documentary project where we're talking to individuals about their experience, their journeys, having experienced sexual assault at some point in their lifetime. And it's an interesting challenge because while, like you said, it's a very heavy topic, we're going about it in a way that illuminates the empowerment element of it, and our sort of the way this came about is with the concept that while it's never ever a good thing that it happens to people, the idea that good and creativity and productivity can't come from that, having potentially been rooted in an experience that somebody's had, is inaccurate. So we want to use this opportunity to illustrate the strength and productivity that people can find along their healing paths and their paths to recovery.
Well, what did bring you to this project? What the two of you, what brought you together and thought about bringing this as such an interesting package?
Yeah, it's a good question. The two of us actually met about 4 years ago. We shared an experience with AmeriCorps. We were serving at a school in Santa Rosa where we became fast friends, and it was interesting because about maybe 6 months or a year into the two of us spending a lot of time together, it was one night we were painting. Frances had a big canvas on her wall that we would paint on sometimes, and we kind of just got to talking, and from that conversation it brought up that the two of us had sexual assault experiences in our lifetime, and the idea that even between the two of us, good friends that had been talking deeply for a long time, that it took that long to express that to one another, and that it was that hard even in that conversation. I would say that conversation was the birth of this project, I think, because from there, 2 years or so after that, we continued the conversation. We became volunteers at the Rape Crisis Center in Santa Rosa, formerly United Against Sexual Assault, now called Verity. And we became crisis line counselors there. Together we went through the training, and so just every week we were doing this training, and it just deepened our understanding of the topic, deepened our compassion and empathy around it, and as a macro social issue, as well as our own personal experiences. And interestingly, this particular idea, the journey of powerful voices, and the idea of creating a product with this happened sitting on the curb right outside here in Occidental. We had just had breakfast at Howard's Cafe, and we sat down, and I was living in New York at the time, and I was back for winter break, and we sat down, and it was just sort of like, when I come back from New York and we're like in the same place again, let's do something about it and with this. And at the time, Francis was at Brooks Institute of Photography, and so it just, so at first we were thinking like, let's make a book, and we can write, and we can take photos across the country, and it evolved into a video project.
That's right. It was different last year. I remember that. I now remember you have transformed it. Interesting.
We have, yes. And a lot has evolved this summer. Last summer, we did a lot of foundation work. The original idea, actually, that it would be a full-length documentary, and this summer we switched it. We decided we're going to be doing 5 to 10 minute short videos on individuals. So each video will be about one person and the powerful journey that they've been through. And the reason we did that, there are several reasons, but I think a main one is that we really didn't want to be in a position where we'd have to say no to anybody who came to us. All of a sudden we sent this out to the world, and we had more responses than we knew what to do with, which was in itself an amazing and enlightening experience. One email out to just our own network, and we got more responses back than we could we could interview at that time. You know, a full-length documentary, we would have had to choose a couple that we thought would tell the story the way we wanted to, and we said, you know what, like, we want everybody who's ready to tell this story to be able to.
Very interesting metamorphosis through that. A good one. I think it made him much more powerful, as you say, powerful voices.
Thank you.
That's the key.
Yeah. I would also like to mention that Frances is right here. She's doing some filming while we're talking. This is Frances's piece of the project. She is our camera person. She does all the audio and the technical.
Say hello, Frances.
Hello. Yeah, and so Frances right now is actually collecting footage for one of our current video projects, which is we've got two things happening right now that this type of that this particular footage might work for. One of them is that the first video that we're going to release, we've released our introductory video, which you can see on our website. It's on our homepage, and we collected all of that footage last summer. And so right now we're doing our first individual story that we release is going to be of the two of us, and actually we're thinking about the next week that's going to come out. So it's an exciting time of editing. This is Frances's part on Final Cut Pro in front of her computer.
Well, that's good. Making you the experiment on. You will be the first, so that will be a great experience.
Absolutely.
For you.
It was a really interesting process interviewing. We sat down and interviewed each other.
So you didn't know each other too well to be able to interview each other, well enough.
It's an interesting point you bring up, because the part of the challenge was to tell the story as if we hadn't heard it before of each other. And actually, I think in the interviewing each other process, it did go more in depth than we had before. The particular challenge with ours, not only, is the process itself a challenging one, being in front of the camera and telling this kind of story and everything, but we'd have to run back and forth to the camera and make sure it was on and make sure the sound was right. And especially, Frances would have to be running around and showing me how to use it, because I don't know how to do a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, a lot of technical stuff ramping up, as they say. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I've got actually lined up the short video clip.
Sure, absolutely. And there are a couple parts where there's just music and words on the screen. So perhaps if you wanted to read that while it's happening, or however you want to do that,
okay.
we'd love to have that played.
And the official title is?
This one is called Introducing the Journey of Powerful Voices.
People want to be heard. People need to be heard.
I've walked in denial for a long time. The truth of the matter is that I was a child who experienced sexual abuse.
I still have a hard time when I think about it. You feel like it was a dream, that it couldn't be real. This is not what your relationship is supposed to be like. This is not how somebody's supposed to treat you.
I told my mother that Grandpa played with my TT. And then she said, well, we won't tell Daddy about this because Daddy will be mad, and Grandpa will feel bad, and Grandma will be sad.
It says in the United States, 1 in 5 women have experienced rape or attempted rape. 1 in 6 have been stalked. 1 in 7 men have experienced violence at the hands of a partner. 1 in 71 men have experienced rape, many before the age of 11. 1.3 million will experience rape or attempted rape this year.
The whole experience from the time I can remember up through my 20s is one of being intimidated and silenced.
I was brought up to be a good girl. A good girl meant never say no.
There's still some things that are just really hard to say out loud.
There was this piece of it, this voice that said, you're to blame, you're to blame, you're to blame. And so I blamed myself. Now, as an adult, I know that that was the secret of covering child sexual abuse.
The Journey of Powerful Voices is a documentary project that illustrates the strength and productivity that people can realize along their path of healing after experiencing sexual assault in their lifetimes. From victim to survivor to thriver, we will share one person's story every month. Together, we will break the silence.
And to know that people have a similar experience in terms of how they cope, that makes you feel better.
Because if 1 in 3 people, I mean the three of us, one of us is going to have some story to tell.
Stand up and go. Turning things around to use those experiences for the good and healthy development of others. That's what it's all about.
However you feel about it, it's okay. You deserve to share it.
Let's talk about it. Let's not leave it in the realm of silence.
And there's somebody that you can talk to.
It's not what happens to us, it's what we do with what happens to us. It's been a long journey, it really has.
A short clip, but very powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, that took us. That was an interesting process creating this one, because it was through the creation of this introductory video, I think, that we really decided and kind of came to the product that we ultimately wanted with it. This particular piece, we collected that footage last summer, 2011, and we were far apart. I was living in New York, and Francis was here in Sebastopol, and so it was. Not only were we we were really trying to figure out exactly what we wanted our project to look like, and it was through kind of piecing this together. And this particular video saw probably 3 or 4 different versions, very different versions, and it was. This one came together very quickly once we kind of got back together and we could kind of gel our ideas and saw the vision of this piece. We're very happy with that.
Yes, a great introduction into what you're doing.
Thank you, yeah.
And we're speaking with Becky Fine and Francis McCorkle of the Journey of Powerful Voices. And you have a byline, Creating Strength Out of Trauma.
Yes.
And that really is where you're coming from in this, isn't it? The empowerment from the bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that title was something we sat in a coffee shop last summer and we said, okay, we're gonna figure out our title this time. And we have this, I think we probably even kept the piece of paper. We just doodled all over a piece of paper and we wrote down words that we wanted this to encapsulate, and we kind of pieced it together. And then it was actually the first thing that came up. And Francis was like, okay, so Francis popped it out, The Journey of Powerful Voices, and we both stopped and said, that's it. That's the one. That's it.
Why go any further? Yeah.
Yeah.
We wanted it to be empowering, and we were, oftentimes when people hear the term sexual assault, it's sort of like a red flag, like, oh, why would you want to do a project on something like that, and so we wanted to, as much as we could, make it a positive one and choose a title that portrayed that. Exactly.
Keep the philosophy you want to project through the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We wanted the idea of trauma to be in there, but not necessarily the term sexual assault. And we recognize that that's a term that potentially, that not everybody will relate with, who maybe have had this type of experience. And something we explore on our website a little bit is we very carefully picked out that term as our umbrella idea. For some people, I know that we've heard that brings up images of violence and that kind of thing, with which the vast majority of these types of experiences are not violent in the way that
would leave marks or physical marks.
Exactly. And so we explain on our website, we're using this term as something that defines basically any any type of experience that you might have had related to sexual abuse, child abuse, domestic violence. There are lots of different terms that people connect with this, and we're hoping to kind of umbrella all of those with those and reach out. Hopefully people will reach out to us who have had this experience and ready to share.
Well, that's the interesting thing. I think in your documentary, a lot of people didn't even realize it was sexual assault. And they were the actual person who was really, they weren't the victim, they were the problem. Isn't that the basis to a lot of that?
Yes, and I think that's something that we've found very strongly already. I'd say we've interviewed probably about 10 people so far, and something that we were expecting to come about and is really happening is that there are very strong themes. No matter what somebody's experience is, everybody's story is very unique to them. Everybody's got their individual situation that happened, but the ways of coping are very similar. The thought processes that happen after having experienced this type of trauma are very similar. And I think something that's going to come from this, and we will see as it goes on, but so far among them, we've had even exact lines come up in every single interview, which is very powerful. Yeah, and that's not something, it's not, we've talked about it. It's not something we're asking them to say or anything, but one of our questions is, what would you say to somebody who's beginning their journey? And we use the term the journey just in terms of, just from this particular type of journey, from when your experience happened and beyond, what your life has been, where your life has taken you since, and almost I would say 80% of them have said the words, "It's not your fault," which is the first thing, I think an extremely common reaction after having experienced something like that is to self-blame. People hold self-blame in an intense kind of way, and it takes years sometimes or a lifetime to drop that kind of blame or move through that kind of blame. And our philosophy is to open up this discussion and to talk about it. We need to come together and support each other and say, this is not something that you asked for. This is not your fault. And
right.
And another thing that has come up in many of our interviews, including our own, is that some people don't consider their experience an assault or an abuse or anything like that for a long time, perhaps until they meet somebody else who's had something happen and they say, oh, that's mine too. Is that something? Is that what you call that? Is that what that means? And something like the term rape is something that is really a hard one to connect with for a lot of people. And we're here to open those avenues. We want to bring it out into the open. Our hope is that people see these interviews and they connect with them and they share with somebody if they're ready to do so.
No, that's a very good point, and it's not something I've ever said publicly, but it's something happened to me when I was young. So, it can happen to anybody at any time, at any age. That's the thing, isn't it?
It really is. It really is, and how common it is just shocking. And I think something that comes up a lot with what we're doing is the idea that no matter who you are, if you specifically have experienced this or not, you undoubtedly know somebody who has. The statistics show it's, just massive numbers of people, and there's still so many people who don't believe it or don't see that that's what's really happening. And it's just there's so many of us.
Well, it's a painful thing to look at and see the pain in other people and what it's caused.
Yeah,
that's a tough one to have to face.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that out loud. And I think if I may, it's a hard thing to share for everyone. And I think men in our society experience an extra level of challenge around sharing, just in the sense of being open and emotional and all of that. So I want to just honor that statement that you just brought up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, let's take this maybe a good point. A couple of weeks ago, obviously, that Representative Akins came up with those awful statements about rape, and a wonderful singer, Taylor Ferreira. Did you hear that that song?
We did. We loved it. Yeah,
Legitimate Rape. I've got it right here, so I thought it would. We can give us a good lead in to talk about some of the heavier stuff
Absolutely.
you're dealing with.
Absolutely.
Okay.
How can you tell if it's legitimate rape? I'll tell you how to spot legitimate rape. You're not sure if you've got legitimate rape. Well, here's a little lesson for you. Tell me if the following things are true. I was a little drunk, illegitimate rape. I knew the rapist well, illegitimate rape. My skirt was kind of short, illegitimate rape. I'm married to the man, that's a husband's privilege. How can you tell if it's legitimate rape? I'll tell you how to spot legitimate rape. You're not sure if you got legitimate rape. Well, here's a little lesson for you. Tell me if the following things are true. I let him take me out, illegitimate rape. I said I was 18, illegitimate rape. He didn't have consent, I'm sure your eyes were saying yes. I'm pregnant from the rape, clearly not legitimate. So now we all know what's legitimate rape. We all know who to trust to tell us what's rape. Republicans who've never experienced rape. They're the ones I want to decide that I should keep the baby growing inside. Because abortion's always wrong. Glad things are so black and white.
To have someone with such authority in our government say such ignorant things was stunning, I think, to the vast majority of people. I mean, how pervasive is that?
Yeah, and it's interesting. It was an appalling comment from Senator Todd Akin claiming that women's body had a way to shut down when there was, when a rape situation was happening, and therefore it's impossible to be pregnant. We don't have to worry about abortion and all that stuff, which is outrageous. Something in reaction, something that Francis and I have really noticed and been taking, kind of trying to tap in on in terms of the Twitter world and Facebook and these kinds of things. This is it spurred such a movement of sharing your stories. We were watching it and we've been kind of exploring the Twitter world. It's a new thing for us and a powerful tool, absolutely. And there were hashtags that were talking about these kinds of things, and all of a sudden there was this outburst of, this is my story, Senator Todd Akin, and does that mean that's not legitimate? Like, this was my experience and it was legitimate and I didn't get pregnant, or I did get pregnant and I had to go through so many loops, and the emotional gravity of bearing the child as a result of a rape is a really intense and needs to be talked about subject. Oh my
goodness, yes.
So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, we think that it's horrifying that this comes up in the public realm, and in some ways, I'd say the silver lining is that we're uncovering some very real ideas that exist in our government right now, and it's bringing out stuff from people who maybe have never shared their stories before and said, hey, look, because this is how you think, we need to talk about this. We need to bring it out into the open.
Exactly. Yeah, it was very disturbing because, specifically because he's on the Science and Technology Committee. You'd think there'd be people who had some basis in reality.
Biology, perhaps. Anatomy. These are good things to know. Yeah. And I think in the song that we just listened to, that came out maybe 2 days after these comments, and I think it covered everything that you can that comes up in the public realm about these are reasons why, maybe, quote, you can't see my fingers right now, but air quotes, she was asking for it, or
right.
These kinds of things, which are horrible elements of the discourse around rape that we're really working to change. The idea that something that somebody wears or says or does contributes or allows for something like that is terrible. And she talks about husbands, and that's a very pervasive idea. Like, well, we're married, and therefore it's allowed.
Right.
I think that she really hit it on the nail with that song in a funny and lighthearted kind of way, but so poignant.
Well, exactly. That's the best way to get at a subject like that, really.
Absolutely. And it's gotten a lot of hits. Something around 500,000 views right now. I know. The Huffington Post, I think, put it up there and stuff. It was it went viral very quickly, which is a neat thing.
Well, indeed. And that's it. I suppose, sometimes we can get complacent, and it takes things like this to say, hey, no, things aren't as we need them to be. We need to do something about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And bringing it out in a big way. And I think that a lot of people have been able to see this, and just to bring out the ignorance around it, and so we're hoping to be part of that conversation. I think it plays into something we've also talked a lot about, Francis and I, with regard to this project, is that we feel like we're getting into some kind of tipping point in society. There's a lot coming out right now about trauma that people experience, and about just a lot of this stuff, and we feel like we're kind of at the breaking point of a wave or something about to crash, and really come out into the public. These are some intense things that need to be discussed.
Yes, because of such ignorance, as we can see.
Yeah.
And the thing is, now your main project is to videograph people, but I think you've also realized that many people may not want to do it in that medium. So you have another vehicle that can enable people to express themselves in other ways. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Yep. We talked a lot about that, and we have an offshoot project of the Journey of Powerful Voices, and we call it Give It a Voice. And we recognize that being on camera is something that's it can be hard for people on a lot of levels. Some people are maybe camera shy or something like that. But then the added level of talking about something like this can be. So all that's to say, we opened up another avenue for people who maybe their form of expression is different than talking about it than verbalizing it the way that you might do in a video. And so this Give It a Voice project is a place where people can submit to us perhaps a written account of their story and how they've survived from it and thrived from it. We want to express that we consider that there is a thriving point, and we're bringing that out instead of writing it or painting it. Or we've met a couple musicians who their expression of their experience is through their music, and and of course the options are endless. And that, right. I think originally Frances is also a painter. She's an artist of many accounts over here, and that was something that I think brought up that discussion is, well, what about these people who want to share their experience, but maybe verbalizing it isn't the way that they want to express it. And so we invite people to bring it to us in that form, and we'll post it on the internet, or perhaps not, if they, it's the idea is just to open up the avenue of conversation. And if sharing it is something you want to do, then you can do that in any way that is right for you.
No, that's a nice way. And any level of sharing, just to keep it personal and just between you and the person, or out there. That's exactly. A nice way to do it. Everyone can get something from that.
Yes, absolutely.
And is it the stories? I mean, are they detailed? I mean, how do people describe their experiences? Does it come metaphorically? Is it very brutal? Up front? How do people explain it?
It's a good question, and it's something that the two of us we've analyzed a lot in terms of what we think is okay to ask people, and what we've come down to is that a lot of times when people do approach us, it's because they're ready to tell their story, and the differences between the stories that we've heard so far. Some people are very graphic about it. This is what happened to me at this age. This is where it was. This pretty specific about things. And for a lot of people, it was maybe many years happening. It was my entire childhood, or and these kinds of things. And so the level of detail is different from each person. We've come upon a couple people who don't have distinct memories around it, and our minds are pretty amazing about the ability to protect ourselves from that type of trauma, and some people who've just don't have clear memories of it but know that something happened. And so sometimes it's as vague as it has happened to me, and I know it has because I can feel it in my body. What it was, I'm not that sure, to very explicit details to what it was. And that's something that how we pose the question is, tell us at whatever level of comfort you are, however much you want to, what your experience was. So we really leave our whole idea with the interview is to leave it in the interviewee's control. And that's an important piece of sharing this type of story, an experience that is a lack of control, something that you experienced in your life that was you not controlling your body or somebody else having control of your body. And so our very, very important, very strict philosophy around this is that full control is in the hands of the interviewee, and we respect that immensely.
Well, it must be difficult for the two of you. I mean, having experienced it and then hearing the stories that people say, it must, go deep in you as well and bring those things back. It must be difficult. It's something that we've had to explore a lot with ourselves. We have. We debrief very, very heavily. We are very specific about our self-care after every interview. We debrief, and then we do something that's very self-care oriented. And I think where we're at right now, and I'll let Frances chime in here for a second as well. Where we're at with our own experiences is by empowering other people to tell these stories and share these stories is by virtue very empowering for us. This has become such an important piece of our own healing journeys that hearing other people share it is by proximity an empowering experience for us. Yes. And it's heavy and it's intense, but we know how good it feels to say it out loud, and so we can tap into that energy, and we have with that not let it drain us every time. Exactly.
I was going to say, as well as just, I've walked away from every interview that we've had so far feeling more empowered, especially because the parts of the interview that we're really focusing on is empowered positive, what tools did you use to get out of it? And so with every interview, we sort of learn more tools for ourselves and hopefully to share with the world,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's got their way of expressing their journey, and it's really good to hear all of those things and to share all of those things, because it's going to connect with somebody else out there.
Well, that's it, exactly. And at the end of these sessions, the people who've been through your work, your project, afterwards, what type of reactions are you getting from them after it coming out? Yeah,
we are glad to say we stay in touch with our interviewees. We've created a post-interview survey, and that's in part to hear what the experience was like for them, and sort of to emphasize the self-care on their end too. It can be a very intense and draining thing. We've talked to several people who the rest of that day was maybe pretty hard, but overall the feeling was uplifting. And so people, by and large, across the board, everybody we've talked to so far have reported back that it was ultimately an empowering experience and one that they were very, very pleased to have gone through.
Yes, well, that's great for you then.
Yeah, we're very
keep
glad.
Going. It's not something you'd want to do if it was, like pulling teeth.
Yeah,
all the time,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And we absolutely wouldn't want to do it if we were hearing that this was something that was further traumatizing people.
Right.
And that's an important piece, is that we have a pre-screening or pre-interview process, and it's a way of for ourselves and for the person who's coming to us to determine if they're in a place in their journey to be able to do something like this. And we recognize that it's that there are re-traumatizing potentials with
Right.
something like this, and we really want for that person to be in a very strong place to be able to bring this back into the forefront of their mind for a little while.
Indeed. Now, you have experience in public health, so that's brought a lot of experience into the project.
Yeah, yep. We have, I think the two of us really appreciate the complementary skills that we bring to it. I just completed a master's degree in public health with an emphasis in sexual and reproductive health, and a lot of that focus was as much as it could be on sexual assault and sexual violence, domestic violence, these kinds of things. And the public health perspective is one that we consider to be a unique and extraordinarily important thing to bring into this discussion. And it's pretty recently hot in the public health discussion. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention just released a very grounding report, a very kind of shocking report that said that 1 in 5 women, report having experienced this at some point in their lives, and 1 in 71 men and before the age of 11. These are, and an important piece about these kinds of statistics is, while the studies are solid, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, they're a very important research organization. The vast majority of this kind of crime or this kind of event or trauma is not reported. The best they can do really is go on well-founded speculation, essentially, as best that they can with that. And so 1 in 5 is very potentially a modest, and 1 in 71, I would say, is quite likely a modest prediction on that front, or a modest account, I think. So those are the hardest numbers that we have with it, and I would venture to guess that it's much higher than that.
It's hard to monetize something, but I'm sure they seem to monetize the cost of different ailments or different things that happen to people as a whole. I'm sure we're talking unknown billions of dollars, the impact on it.
That's probably true. It's a tricky thing to bring into the monetization realm, and like a lot of things, if you factor in post-traumatic stress disorder and inability to work and a lot of things, it says, this same report from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention report that 81 or, between 80 and 90% of people experience post-traumatic stress from something like this, which is not surprising and unrecognized. The types of, the impact that this has on greater society is profound and very much under the carpet.
Some things happening that I know you want to tell us about.
Yes, absolutely. We would love to share 2 really important things. I think I want to start with an event that we're going to be actually showcased at next week in San Francisco. It's called Surviving and Thriving, and it was created by a woman who found us last summer, and before we'd done the introductory video or anything, she just so related with the language we used around it, and we realized that our 2 missions align really impressively. And so she asked that we come, and she's going to showcase our trailer, and we'll have a table set up. So that's at 111 Mina near 2nd Avenue in San Francisco.
2nd Street.
2nd Street, yes, excuse me, I'm in New York terms.
Right.
Proceeds go to benefit San Francisco Women Against Rape, and Woman Inc., which is women working to eliminate violence. I forget what the acronym exactly is, but I certainly encourage, if you go to our website, there's a lot of information about that. Surviving and Thriving 2012, supported by Maya Angelou. That was where the title came from. It's a very impressive event. And the other thing I'd love to take
when is that again? Next
Saturday? Yeah, Thursday.
No, Thursday.
This is September 27th, starting at 5:30 to 9. It's in an art gallery. There'll be several other artists featured, and there'll be cocktails, and it's a nice party type of vibe. The other thing we touched on really quickly in the break, Eve Ensler, I just have to bring Eve Ensler into this discussion, who's the founder and writer of the Vagina Monologues and an important player in this realm. This is a big year for them. It's the 15th anniversary of the Vagina Monologues and an event she's calling 1 Billion Rising. And the idea is that 1 billion people in the world have experienced rape at some point or attempted rape in their lifetimes. And we want 1 billion people to stand up and dance on February 14th, 2013. And so tune into it. All around the world, people are going to be standing up and dancing on February 14th, 2013. And I just can't emphasize enough the importance of this event.
Just happens to be Valentine's Day.
It is. It's V-Day. V-Day. Yep, exactly. An important day. And since there's a lot going on that, if you go to the V-Day website and we bring her up, she's been an important player in our experiences and the stories.
Who else are the important players in this, in government and in other non-profits or NGOs?
That's a good question. She's been sort of our heroine in this sense. I think she has been telling these stories for a lot of years. She brought this into the picture 15 years ago when nobody was really talking about this, and the Vagina Monologues just kind of blew everybody out of the water. It was so progressive and so taboo at the time, and it's gotten more and more deep and serious as time has gone on, and it's become a more acceptable media. The current show is becoming very, very intense, where it used to be very funny and lighthearted, and it still has that, but it's getting heavier and heavier with reflection of the current situation. I think.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah, that will. We're hoping that's going to be our launch event in February. Our big launch will be a production of the Vagina Monologues in Santa Rosa come February or April or March.
Good.
Yeah.
Any particular place? Do you know where we're going to?
Well, we haven't picked a venue. We have some high hopes for venues, perhaps the Glazer Center or perhaps somewhere in Sebastopol. These are some ideals. We have some logistics to work out, but we will keep you posted.
If people want to get hold of you and find more information, let them know.
Yes, please do check out our website. We're at journeyofpowerfulvoices.com. An important piece of this process, as we've mentioned quickly in this interview, is that we don't initiate these conversations. We ask that people who are ready to share and want to share come to us. And so if this is something that is connected with you, or perhaps somebody who might benefit from hearing about us or talking to us, let them know. journeyofpowerfulvoices.com. Our email address is journeyofpowerfulvoices@gmail.com. Yeah.
Okay. And it's men and women?
Men and women,
it's
yes.
Not just women.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, it's very important to us that this is something that impacts everybody, and we want to reflect that reality.
Between now and then, you're basically going to be accepting people for the project and just keeping filming, basically. Yeah. Is that the...
That is right. We are just going to keep on keeping on. We want to film everybody who comes to us, and we are working on it as much as we can. Our ultimate goal is that this is our full-time jobs. So we're working on the fundraising element of it pretty soon. Here we'll become a nonprofit, and we'll kick off our fundraising event. So stay tuned for that as well. If that's something that we would love you to hear about that, then certainly check out our website.
Well, fabulous. Thank you so much, Becky Fine and Frances McCorkle.
And thanks you, Arnold.
For having us.
Yeah, Journey of Powerful Voices. What a wonderful idea, and you're realizing it. Well done.
Thank you.
Great work.